in thinking that, in believing that, in enforcing that, in allowing that to be part of their conventional accepted code of morality, they have done something immoral themselves. Okay, so we finally get an argument. Now we have, from chapter 3 of the Shafer-Landau book, we have an argument. We have an argument that moral skepticism, we have an argument that it's false. Moral skepticism, remember, is the view that there are no objective, universal moral facts that apply to everyone everywhere. Okay, moral skepticism. If it's false, then moral objectivism, which is just the claim that there are objective, universal moral facts or moral laws, that has to be true. So we're going to get an argument against this and an argument for this. And that argument is based around a certain phenomenon, and it's called moral error. And that's the name of the chapter. The name of the chapter is moral error. Okay, so we're going to talk about that in a sec. But first, we need a distinction. We need a distinction between what is sometimes called conventional morality. Conventional morality is the moral code of a given society. It's what that society thinks is morally right or morally wrong. It's what members of that society try not to do, at least a lot of them. They try not to do certain things and they try to do other things. All of that, you put it all together, the beliefs and the behavior, the condemnation and the praise, that's the conventional system of morality, the believed system of morality, the moral code of a given society. There's conventional morality, and then there is objective morality. Objective morality, if there is such a thing, is not something that's created by a group of people or an individual person. It's the moral code that governs everyone everywhere, regardless of whether they are aware of it or not. It is the one true moral law. That's objective morality. Okay, so now let's draw a table. The questions are, does conventional morality exist? And does objective morality exist? Right? And let's go through all of the answers. Okay, so first, according to the moral skeptic, does objective morality exist? Answer. Answer now. Say an answer out loud, wherever you're watching this. According to the moral skeptic, does objective morality exist? No. No. That's the whole point of moral skepticism. It's skepticism about objective morality. So there's no such thing as the one true moral code or the one true moral law, according to the moral skeptic. And according to moral objectivism, does objective morality exist? Answer now. Yes. Yes. That's the whole point of moral objectivism, is that there is one true moral code that applies to everyone everywhere. Okay, according to the moral skeptic, does conventional morality exist? Answer. Yes. Yes. Unequivocally yes. Conventional morality is just the believed moral code of a society. And everyone, the moral skeptic included, thinks that, well, yes, people have moral beliefs. And when you put some people together in a group, of course, it's obvious, you can tell, their moral beliefs sort of coalesce. They tend to have somewhat similar moral beliefs. And in those cases where their moral beliefs overlap, that's their conventional code of morality. And they will enforce that code of morality by condemning certain types of behavior. This is just an obvious, unimpeachable sociological fact. So the moral skeptic says, yes, conventional morality exists. According to the moral objectivist, does conventional morality exist? Answer. Yes, of course. For the same reason that the moral skeptic thinks that conventional morality exists. It obviously exists. Conventional morality is just the believed moral system, the adopted or held moral system of a group of people. And so people, of course, have moral systems that they hold fast to. It's just that the moral objectivist thinks that there's some other independent moral standard, that all of these socially created moral standards are striving to match. Whereas the moral skeptic says, no, there is no one true objective moral standard, that these invented or created moral standards are striving to fit or match. Okay, so we've got some terminology on the board and that distinction. Now let's go back to moral error. There are at least two ways that you could think about moral error. Only one of them, though, is going to get us an attack on moral skepticism. That's what we're after. That's what happens in this chapter. The first way you could think about moral error is in terms of actions. Acts can be a kind of moral error or a kind of moral mistake. I mean, the most straightforward case is where someone just does something immoral. You're walking one day and you notice a child drowning in a pond, right? We've talked about this example earlier in the course. And the child's going to drown if you don't step in and pull the child out of the pond. But your pants are dry clean only, and if you step into the pond, they're going to get wet, and you have to make a decision. Do you let your pants get wet by stepping into the pond and saving the child, or do you just keep going, dry pants, child dies in the pond? Say you keep going. That's an action, and you might think that action is a certain kind of moral error. It's a certain kind of moral mistake. Okay, that's one kind of moral error. Then there's the kinds of moral error that can accrue to beliefs. But that's not how you spell beliefs. You need an E after the B. Beliefs. Beliefs, you might think, those can also exhibit a kind of moral error, right? Say that you believe, say that someone believes, here, what's someone's belief that we think is a kind of moral error, right? They believe that slavery is morally permissible. They think it's fine. Slavery is fine. You might say, just believing that, just thinking that in one's mind is a kind of mistake, is a kind of moral error of some kind. Well, the kind of moral error that we're talking about is just the belief kind. So forget about acts. It's just beliefs we're talking about. And notice something. This, conventional morality is just a bunch of this. It's just a bunch of beliefs, and also some behavior that reinforces those beliefs, manifests those beliefs. Fundamentally, these are what you get here. So if beliefs can be morally erroneous, if they can exhibit a kind of moral error, then you might think that systems of conventional morality can exhibit a kind of moral error. So let's say, for instance, that there's a system of conventional morality that holds this moral belief, that slavery is fine. There surely have been such societies before, right? Where a vast majority think that this is an accurate moral statement, and they act upon this all the time. And so this sort of commitment is part of their system of conventional morality. Or the example that I got from students just recently, another system of conventional morality might hold something like homosexual sex is immoral. Say that you thought that this moral belief, which was at the foundation of a certain system of conventional morality, some society, right? Conventional morality of society X, okay? Some society holds that homosexual sex is immoral. There are many such societies that exist today. And our society, the society that you are in, if you're watching this video, probably, if it doesn't hold this view, then it did fairly recently, certainly within my lifetime. Let's say that you want to explain the moral error that's going on in this kind of belief, in this system of conventional morality. Can you do it? Can you say that there's an error here? Well, let's go through some of the views, right? What about the moral relativist? Can moral relativism say that a society that has this at the foundation of its system of conventional morality is wrong? Well, no, it can't say that that society is wrong, right? Because every society has their own system of conventional morality, and according to relativism, every society's system of conventional morality is right for that society. So there's no error here. There's no mistake. The moral relativist can't explain any kind of error going on in this society. So if you were a moral relativist to start, and you still think that there's something wrong about a whole society, that believes that, then you need to make a decision, according to Shafer-Landau. You need to either decide to give this up, right, or give this up. What if you were a moral subjectivist? What if you thought that every individual person has their own moral code, and every person's moral code is right for them? Well, then you for sure can't find any error or fault in this, because all of those individual people in this society, they're going to believe this, they're going to hold it as one of their moral commitments, and, well, you can't say that they're wrong, because according to your official view, they're right. That's just what moral subjectivism is. It's the view that everyone has their own moral code and everyone's moral code is right for them. So it's just true that for those people, according to moral subjectivism, homosexual sex is immoral. So you can't condemn it. And by the way, of course, if you don't like the use of homosexual sex here, swap in something else. Swap in something that you think is perfectly fine, is perfectly permissible, right? But that is condemned by some society somewhere. Swap that in, and then you're going to want to say that that society is making some kind of mistake. And on these views, you're not going to be able to say that. Okay, but there's a third type of moral skepticism. And that third type of moral skepticism is nihilism. Nihilism is the view that, well, there are no moral facts whatsoever. They're not relative to cultures. They're not subjective in the sense that they're relative to individuals. There are just no moral facts whatsoever. And then remember that if you're a moral nihilist, you then have to explain the nature of moral language. And one of the ways of explaining the nature of moral language is by saying that moral talk can literally be true or false, and that therefore all moral discourse is false, is mistaken, is an error. Every moral statement is erroneous. Oh, okay, well actually, on this view, you could say that this conventional system of morality has made some kind of error. It's made some kind of mistake. Because according to the moral nihilist, this is false. It's not true that homosexual sex is immoral. But the reason, according to the error theorist, that this statement is false is that all moral statements are false. So it's also true that the statement, homosexual sex is fine. That statement, where by fine we mean morally permissible. As long as everyone consents, it's fine. It's morally permissible, right? That view also, according to the error theorist, is false, right? Because all moral statements are false. Anytime anyone says anything about what's right and wrong according to the error theorist, they've said something false. You might have wanted something more. We got a kind of error that accrued to the conventional morality of a society. We got a kind of moral error out of the error theory, but it wasn't maybe the kind of moral error that we wanted, right? Maybe what we wanted to say about a society like this, a society that says that homosexual sex is immoral or something like that, maybe what we wanted to say that in believing that, that society was not just saying something false, the way that you say something false when you say Thomas Jefferson was the first president of the United States. He wasn't. He was the third president. You've said something false. What we wanted was to say that believing this or having this as part of your system of morality, that is itself immoral. If we wanted to say that, we would want not just to say that this statement is false, but we would want to morally condemn it. Maybe that's what we're after. I mean, it certainly seems, I think it's going to seem to a lot of people that a society that holds that homosexual sex is immoral hasn't just made a kind of factual error. They've made a truly moral error. In thinking that, in believing that, in enforcing that, in allowing that to be part of their conventional accepted code of morality, they have done something immoral themselves. And Shafer-Landau's point is that the only way you get to say that is if you're a moral objectivist. Only when you think that there's some independent moral standard out there, independent of what any society or any individual says, only then do you have the resources to condemn a society's whole system of conventional morality. This view can't do it, this view can't do it, and even moral nihilism, which can be accompanied by error theory, can't do it. Error theory will only get you the claim that this statement is false. It won't get you the claim that this statement is morally wrong. And that might be what you're after. In order to make this point a little clearer, we need now a distinction, I guess I'll put it here, a distinction between two kinds of critique or two kinds of criticism. Internal versus external critique. Here's an example of an internal critique, right? Here's the box. This box is the accepted moral code of a society. And we'll go with the example from the reading, right? Say that in the 20th century, part of the moral code of the society that spans roughly to the boundaries of the United States or whatever, it held something like all people are fundamentally, in the morally relevant sense, equal. They should be treated equally by the state. They should be treated equally by their peers. They all deserve dignity and respect, something like that, right? But say that this society, or at least some kind of sub-society of it, the southern part of the United States, right in the middle of the 20th century, also thinks that racial segregation is fine. Segregation's fine. It's morally permissible. It's morally okay. It's not an egregious moral wrong or any moral wrong at all. So says this society, right? You could level a criticism of this particular moral belief that makes it into the system of conventional morality of this society. You could level a criticism of that from within the system, right? You could say, look, it's a foundational belief of our society that all people are equal. But don't you see, you haven't realized this moral belief of our society is incompatible with this one. And because this one is more fundamental or more important or more foundational, we have to abandon this one. There's a mistake here. And there's a critique of it. And the critique, as it were, comes from inside. It comes from within the moral code of that society. That's an internal critique. You don't need moral objectivism in order to get an internal critique like that, right? But what if you wanted to critique the whole moral system, or one of the foundational beliefs in the moral system, maybe the most foundational one, right? If this belief instead was something that you, well, thought was an egregious mistake, right? You know, some people are meant to be slaves. Maybe that was at the heart. You could imagine a society where there's no commitment to some kind of equality, but instead that there's a commitment to the fact that some people are destined to be slaves. It's right for them to be slaves. If that's the case, you're not going to be able to criticize this kind of internal belief with this one because they're totally compatible. If you want to criticize this, you need, well, an external critique. You need there to be some moral rule, some moral belief, some moral claim that's outside of the system of this society's conventional morality. It's going to need to be outside. It's going to need to be down here, right? Slavery is evil, or all people are equal, or something like that. And then, of course, you can use these to criticize this. This is wrong because it conflicts with this, and this is more important or more fundamental or correct, whereas this is just incorrect, right? You need to go outside of the system in order to critique the whole system, or in order to critique the fundamental parts of that system. But you can only have external critique if you have external standards, if you have some moral claims that hold true independent of what any particular society thinks about anything. And if you want to do that sort of a thing, if you want to criticize a system of conventional morality, the whole system, or the foundation of the system, you need to think that there is some fact about which systems are right and which systems are wrong. And if you think that, then you're a moral objectivist. That's the argument of this chapter.